The Vietnam War from a Vietnamese perspective. In this war, the United States has used everything except nuclear weapons, all advanced weapons. Why did it fail in the end? And what about Vietnam? The independence and reunification of the colonies were completed step by step. 19th century. The European imperialist countries began to expand into Asia. With the French fleet's invasion of Vietnam, most of Vietnam became a French colony. Until the outbreak of World War II, Japan wantonly invaded Asian countries, not only committed an unforgivable sin against our country, also invaded Vietnam in 1940. During this period, proletarian revolutionary Ho Chi Minh launched a revolutionary movement. The Viet Minh was established and organized a series of anti-Japanese battles until Japan was defeated and surrendered in August 1945. Ho Chi Minh launched the August Revolution Agai. He hoped to liberate Vietnam once and for all, achieve national independence, and in Hanoi in northern Vietnam, the establishment of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, historically known as North Vietnam. But then France jumped out a guy. Obviously, they didn't want to see this result. They wanted to continue colonizing Vietnam. So France supported Emperor Bao Dai establishment in Saigon, South Vietnam, in order to gain control of the entire territory of Vietnam. France sent 70,000 expeditionary force. Yep, Vietnam waged a 9-year legal battle until 1954 at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. The North Vietnamese achieved a decisive victory. This victory also led to July 1945. The international community reached the Geneva Accords. The agreement stipulates that France will withdraw from Vietnam, abandon the colonies in southern Vietnam, armistice between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, and free elections with the 17th parallel north as the dividing line. Achieve peaceful reunification. The 9-year Court War ended. This war, also known as the First Indochina War, Vietnam called it the War of Resistance against France. However, after the French army withdrew from Vietnam, the United States in Southeast Asia, the hegemony of the world, a flagrant violation of the spirit of the Geneva Accords, active involvement in Vietnamese affairs. They tried to contain so-called communism, expansion as an excuse. Will Vietnam South Laos? Cambodia is under protection. Support the pro-American regime and GU forces, obstructing and undermining the peaceful reunification of the three countries. The United States seeks to further control Vietnam, supporting Southern Prime Minister Wu Ting-yuan in launching a coup, overthrew the Bao Da dynasty. A new Republic of Vietnam was established. The new non-new government was supported by the United States, implemented a strong anti-communist policy, intentionally ignoring previous agreements, refused to hold a full-month election, refusal to unify North Vietnam. The people of South Vietnam opposed American intervention, the dictatorship of the core government. In 1960, the Armed Forces for the Liberation of South Vietnam were established. A massive wave of anti-dictatorship struggles was launched. This period, the United States continues to provide weapons and equipment to the new government, and financial aid, and dispatched military advisors to assist Wu Ting-yuan in his operations. But this way of fighting does not effectively suppress the Southern Liberation Forces. After Kennedy became President of the United States in 1961, he changed his policy towards Vietnam, sending U.S. Special Forces into Vietnam, go directly to war. But even in this case, Southern Liberation Forces still occupied two-thirds of South Vietnam. Now, 1964. The United States seeks to reverse the unfavorable situation. Self-directed and self-made the Bayou Gulf incident, and use this as an excuse to expand the war. They openly sent large troops into Vietnam. At the same time, Australia, Korea, Thailand, the Philippines, and other countries also sent troops to Vietnam. So the Vietnam War entered the stage of total war. Facing the great enlightenment of America, the Vietnamese people also know the United States cannot be defeated by conventional means. So they adopted the method of consuming stations to prevent. You moved underground to resist the American invasion. They built dense tunnels underground. These tunnels not only extend in all directions, and it can go up to hundreds of kilometers. The facilities inside are also very complete. It's not just hospitals for the wounded. There is a bedroom for sleeping and resting, weapons for making ammunition, warehouses for storing grey. For the concealment of the tunnel, they also opened the tunnel, repaired in unexpected places for Americans, like under the stove, in the barn and in the bar. Throughout the war, Vietnamese people live almost entirely in tunnels. They rest in tunnels during the day, climb out of the tunnel at night to inquire about news, or collect supplies to deal with the Vietnamese in the tunnels. The US military has tried every means. They used bombers to drop a lot of bombs, but the depth of the tunnel is manageable. These indiscriminate bombings, even if you find the tunnel entrance, it's useless because the internal structure of the tunnel is complex. Throwing a grenade in it won't blow up the Vietnamese. Even if the poison gas is released into the hole, it can be easily resolved with a wall of water. No amount of poison can get high if the Americans dare to enter the tunnel rashly. And that was the beginning of the nightmare. Due to unfamiliarity with the authentic environment, it is very easy for Americans to get lost in tunnels. We have to face all kinds of traps. Most of the US troops have just entered the tunnel. Will be killed, you could say. These tunnels are essential for resisting American attacks. Played a very important role. By 1968, the Americans who invaded Vietnam at that time has reached more than 540,000 people. But despite the large number of troops dispatched by the US military, a lot of manpower and material resources have been invested, and advanced weaponry. Still no decisive victory. At this moment, the United States realized that an armistice was signed with Vietnam in Paris. It is impossible to win this war. No matter how many troops are invested, it is difficult to turn the battlefield around. The decline of... So in 1969, when Nixon became President of the United States, launched a war-Vietnamese policy, the so-called war in Vietnam, the United States provides military assistance, then transfer the war mission to the puppet government, suspected of pulling the US military out of the Vietnam battlefield. March 1972, with the North Vietnamese People's Army, launched a massive spring offensive. Large and small cities controlled by puppet governments all launched an attack and raided the US Embassy in Saigon. Rockets were fired at the Prime Minister's building. Although this raid did not capture the US Embassy, but the psychology of the US military, it was a huge blow. Facing the side-by-side battle of the liberation forces of the North and the South, the United States feels the pressure of war is increasing. There was also a lot of anti-war sentiment in the country. So the following year, the United States was forced to US troops withdraw from Vietnam. It also recognized the independence and sovereignty of Vietnam. By January 1975, the Vietnamese People's Army launched a decisive offensive and captured Saigon on April 30th of that year. In July 1976, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam has unified the Republic of Vietnam. The country was designated as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The Vietnam War ended. During more than a decade of the Vietnam War, American soldiers massacred large numbers of villages, especially after the My Lai massacre on March 16, 1968. American soldiers have no humanity, etc. Killed more than 500 people, unarmed Vietnamese women and children. It also uses the generator of Machine C, contaminated 10% of Vietnam's land. The ecological environment of Vietnam caused serious harm. Millions of people were afflicted by this disease. It can be said that in the Vietnam War, the United States has used nuclear weapons in addition to nuclear weapons. Almost all types of advanced weaponry, from the bomber, fighter carrier, battleships to radiation weapons, Molotov cocktails and gas bombs have been used all over the place. Really do everything. But in the end I lost. America is in this war. It cost over $200 billion. More than 40,000 killed. Fierce failure. The United States has to scale back its global strategy, greatly influenced since the world pattern for decades, and the Vietnamese people at the cost of more than 2 million casualties, finally achieved independence and unity.